Thank you, Maxime. So, hello everybody, and welcome to this talk. This talk is about improving startup performance with lazy loading. But first of all, let me introduce myself. I am Manfred. I'm a trainer and consultant with focus on, of course, Angular. And I'm also part of the Google Developer Expert program, which I'm very proud of. I'm from Austria, and I'm doing a lot of assignments in Germany. And from time to time, I'm writing. My book is the book with the most ugly cover animal. It has been published with O'Reilly in Germany. But anyway, ugly or not, I'm very proud of it, of course. So what are the contents of this talk? First of all, I will talk about lazy loading. I will show how to leverage lazy loading to improve the performance of your application. And I will also talk about preloading, which compensates some issues that comes with preloading, with lazy loading. In addition to that, I will talk about an issue that arises when you are using lazy loading together with shared modules. And in addition to that, I will also present 2 solutions for this issue. But first things first, let's start with lazy loading. By the way, a good friend of mine told me that I'm very authentic when I'm talking about lazy things. I'm not sure what he meant, but I think it was some kind of compliment, perhaps. Anyway, what we are seeing here is the typical structure, the typical module structure of an Angular application. We have this root module called app module, we have some feature modules, and we have one or several shared modules. And normally, Angular is loading all those modules at once. All those modules are normally loaded at once when the application started. And this is exactly where lazy loading comes into play, because when you are going with lazy loading, you can start with the first module of your application, and then you can load further modules on demand. For instance, on demand, when the user clicks here or there, you are loading the first feature module with 2 shared modules. It depends on when the user clicks somewhere else, you are loading a second feature module with another shared module. It depends on. And of course, so you can load all the modules you need for your application just on demand. So what does it need to get started with lazy loading? All it needs is to use a special routing configuration with this load children property. Load children is pointing to the file in question, to the file that contains your module you want to lazily load. It also contains this hash sign here as a separation character, and then you have to append here the name of your module class. And this is more or less all you need to do when you want to load a module by the means of lazy loading. Of course, now the question arises, which root is activated when this very lazy loaded module gets activated? And the answer can be found within the roots of this module. This module, of course, has its own routes, and there we can find perhaps a default route, a route with an empty path. And this is the route that gets activated when you are triggering lazy loading for a module. In addition to that, you need a special build configuration. You need a build configuration that is just splitting your chunk into several chunks, splitting your bundle into several bundles that can be lazy loaded. Of course, when everything would end up in one and the same bundle, lazy loading wouldn't make any sense. And the good message here is that when you are using the CLI, you are done. You don't need to do anything else, just use the CLI. The CLI comes pre-configured with the so-called ng-tools webpack loader, and this loader is just taking care about splitting up your bundle into several chunks that can be lazy loaded. So when you are directly going with Webpack, because you need all the flexibility of Webpack, then you can also use ng-tools Webpack. the CLI team is exposing this loader directly for the usage with Webpack, so you don't need to use the CLI to get it. And at this point here, big thanks to the CLI team for exposing this part of the CLI to the rest of the world. There is also an alternative to it. There is the Angular router loader. It has been around for quite a time, and you can also use this Angular router loader with your own Webpack configuration to make sure that your bundle is split up. And once again, big thanks to Brendan Roberts at this time within the presentation, because Brendan is doing so much stuff for the community, and Brendan has contributed this loader in very early days, and so he helped us to get started with all those features when these features have been quite young. So in general, always there are two sides of a coin, and this is also true when it comes to lazy loading. Lazy loading just means that we are loading some parts of the application later. We are just postponing work, and as you might know, postponing work doesn't mean that the work is going away. It just means the work has to be done later. And this is very true here. First of all, we get a better startup performance because we are postponing the loading procedure. But then during runtime, of course, we have to load the module in question, and this causes a slight array. Not an array, so a delay, of course. And this is exactly where preloading comes in. Preloading helps with this issue. The idea behind preloading is quite easy. The idea is that modules that might be needed later are directly loaded after the application startup. So first the application starts, the user sees the first page of the application, and then the application is just preloading all the other modules so that are available immediately when they are needed. So what does it take to get started with preloading? It doesn't take much. You just need to register a preloading strategy. And you are doing this when you are setting up the routes for your root module. And this is exactly what I'm doing here on this slide. Here I'm calling router module for root. I'm passing in my route configuration array, the array with all the mappings between the paths and the components, and I'm also passing in this parameter object. And as you see here, this parameter object is just registering a preloading strategy. It is using the preloading strategy, preload all modules. This is a baked-in preloading strategy Angular offers. And as the name suggests, it is just preloading all the modules that are configured for lazy loading. You can also write your own preloading strategies very easily. It is just a matter of implementing an interface, of implementing one and only one method, and this one method decides whether or when a specific module is preloaded. So let's have a look at a demonstration. Let's find out if this guy here on the stage is saying the truth. For this, I'm switching to a sample app I've prepared. This sample app is about booking flights. I'm using this sample app to show many aspects of Angular. And this sample app has something I have invented. I'm calling it Login for Very Honest People. Yeah. So I found out that when everyone is honest, everything is much more easy in this world. So I can log in here, and then I can switch to book a flight. And here I can search, of course, for a flight. I can also search for a passenger. And when I'm logged in, then the current user's name is proposed here for the passenger search. So currently, the name Max is proposed. When I'm not logged in, then nothing is proposed here. So please keep this in mind. We will need this a bit later. So currently this application is just loading everything when the application starts. But now I want to switch to lazy loading, and for this I'm switching to my editor. Here I have the roots of my root module. This root module has this empty route, it has this route for home, and here I will just add another route, a route that is called flight search. Path flight search. Yeah, and together with flight search, I'm using this property that is called load children. And load children, as mentioned, has to point to the module in question. I have to point to the module file. The name of it is flight booking / flight booking module. And then I have to append the name of the class, and the name of the class is also flight booking module. So let me just take a bit of water. Okay. Fine. So this is my root that is triggering lazy loading. Let's also have a look to the root configuration for this lazy loaded module. Let's have a look into the flight booking routes. Within this flight booking routes, I have a main route, and this route is called flight booking. But we have another flight booking route, as we have seen before. This flight booking route is triggering lazy loading. And because of this, I'm switching here to an empty path so that this route is directly activated when we are loading our lazy loaded module. Let's also have a look to our app module. Here I'm referencing the flight booking module. Referencing a module that is lazy loaded isn't a good idea, because when a bundling solution like Webpack is detecting this reference, this solution will follow the reference, and this solution will take everything that can be found under this reference and put it into the main bundle. And as mentioned before, when everything ends up in the main bundle, lazy loading isn't possible. So we have to make sure to omit every reference to lazy loaded modules. Okay, so when I've done everything correctly, I should end up with another bundle, and here it is. My CLI has created a bundle with the name 5chunk.js. So the CLI and Webpack in general is just giving numbers to my bundles. And I can configure this to get pretty names, but for this demonstration, I'm just going with numbers. So let's switch back to our application. Let's switch into our network tab, and let's reload the application. And here we are seeing that everything is loaded, everything but the 5chunk.js. But when I'm switching to book a flight, nothing happens, which is quite a pity. Oh, come on. So let me save this again. I've got my bundle, my 5.js. Let's try it again. No, nothing happens. So the demo gods aren't on my side. Let's double check. Here I have my module. Here I have my flight booking routes. Here. Pardon? The import should go away. It should be removed by the TypeScript compiler. A comma? Where is a comma missing? Ah, okay. So somewhere here, you think? Pardon? Ah, okay. Here somewhere. No. Ah, no, I see, yeah. 21, okay. Yeah, I don't think that this is the issue. Let's try it again. Nothing happens. App.routes, okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you. You've saved me. Flight booking, of course. So when the name is correct, everything should work. Yeah, thank you. Big applause to my friend here. Okay, thank you. And as you've seen, now my file is loaded. Now we can see that the file 5.js gets loaded on demand. So nothing is loaded. I switch to book a flight, and here we have 5.js. Awesome, isn't it? So you have also seen this loading indicator, haven't you? I'm switching to book a flight, loading indicator. It takes some seconds to load this additional chunk, which is, of course, an issue, especially when there is low bandwidth. And this issue can be prevented by using preloading. For this, I'm switching back to my application. I'm going down to the point where I'm using the app routes, where I'm calling router module for route. And here I'm passing something like this parameter object, a parameter object with a preloading strategy. And here I'm going, as mentioned, with preload all modules. So I'm saving it. Let's switch back to my application. Let's clear this. Reload. And we see that our chunk, 5.js, is loaded, but it is loaded quite late. So when we look here, it is loaded, hopefully, after the user has seen the first page of the application, after the user is about to decide where to click next. So it is just triggered after 2 seconds. Cool, so it seems like preloading and lazy loading works. So let's switch to book a flight. I'm logging in again. I'm switching to book a flight. I'm switching to search passenger. And as you see, we are seeing nothing. There is nothing proposed anymore. So somehow we've broken our application, did we? Before, the current user's name was suggested here, and now there is suggested nothing. So what did happen here? Let me explain what happened. Is that I seem to have catch a flu. And the second thing that happened is that we have these 3 modules here. We have the app module, we have the flight module, and we have a shared module. And this shared module has an auth service. And the auth service is remembering the current user's name. It is remembering that the user is logged in and that the user has the name Max. And the problematic point here is that a lazy loaded module gets its own dependency injection scope. And so it gets its own instance of the auth service. And this is quite a pity, because here we are ending up with 2 instances of a singleton. And as you might know from every good Western movie, this town isn't big enough for 2 singletons. And so we have somehow get rid of this second singleton here. And the good message about this is that everything that can't be found within the current dependency injector is looked up 1 level above. And this level above is here the global level, the level that has this global auth service where the user is authenticated. So indeed, everything we need to accomplish is to get rid of this auth service here. And it is quite easy to get rid of it. There are two patterns you can go with. The first pattern is documented somewhere within the Angular docs. It says that you shall use a core module that gets all the global providers like the Auth service. And this core module is only allowed to be imported into the app module. By doing this, you are guaranteeing that this Auth service is just provided globally for the whole application. This is the first solution to this. But when you are going with this solution, you very easily end up with a very, very huge core module. And this is problematic. It is also problematic because this pattern is splitting up your composition. It is splitting up your shared module into the shared module and into a core module part. And that's why I'm preferring another solution. And this solution is intended for libraries, but you can also use it with your own code. You find this pattern, for instance, within the router itself. You find this pattern, for instance, within third-party vendor libraries like ng-conf translate. When you are going with this pattern, I would suggest to create a dedicated shared module like an Auth module. You are seeing it here. And now it is getting a bit awkward, this Auth module has to be provided in two flavors. One flavor comes with services and one flavor comes without. And I know it sounds a bit awkward that we have to provide our module in two versions, but that is the pattern. And as mentioned, this pattern is widely adopted, and Angular makes it very easy to implement this pattern. The version with the service providers is included into the app module, and the other version is included into all other modules that needs the declarations of this module. Some components or pipes, for instance. And so you are again guaranteeing that the services are just registered within the global dependency injection scope and in nothing other scope. So in addition to that, you have to write your module. And first of all, you are writing the module without providers. To emphasize this, I have just created an empty provider array here. And then you are creating a static method. This method is normally called for root. I think you know this method from the router and from other tools. And this method is just returning something with the type module with providers. A module with providers is nothing else than a pre-existing module that is extended by some service providers. And this is exactly what happens here. Here at this slide, you are seeing that I'm going with my existing Auth module, and I'm adding my providers, for instance, my Auth service to this Auth module. So, after this, you are using the for root version of your module with your root module. Normally, this is the app module. And in addition to that, you are using your Auth module without for root with all the other modules you needed. Of course, you can write some nifty other method for the other modules. The router, for instance, has this for child module you could use here. So let's have a look at a demonstration for this. Let's switch into our application and let's have a look into the shared module. The shared module is quite huge, and here it is just setting up the provider for the Auth service. I'm taking this out. And I'm switching to another file I have prepared. The file is called Auth Module. So this file is almost empty. And here I'm just appending a module. And the module is called Auth Module. So I don't have anything to declare, but here I could declare, for instance, a login component, a logout component, a user status component, whatever. And the important thing here is that the providers array is empty. It is empty and it stays empty. And in addition to this, I just create a static for root method. And the static for root method is returning, as mentioned, a module with providers. And this is just an ordinary structure that is pointing to my very own Auth module and pointing to my providers. And here I'm going, of course, with my Auth service provider. So I'm importing this thing here. I'm importing this other thing, this other component. Okay, perfect. So let's give the CLI some time to rebundle. Perhaps the CLI has finished. And before we are switching to our application, I'm just registering this Auth module. For this, I'm switching to the app module, and here I'm importing the Auth module with the services, Auth module.forRoot. Of course, with each other module, for instance, with the flight booking module, we could also import this Auth module, but without calling for root. Let's do this for a demonstration purpose. I'm switching to flight booking module. And here I'm just importing my Auth module without for root. Okay, so as mentioned, let's give the CLI some time to recompile. So it is complaining, Auth module is not a module. I'm not believing this. I'm not believing this. Let's resave this. Yeah. Yeah, issues. So let's retry this. I'm reloading my application. I'm logging in. I'm Max again. And I'm switching to book a flight, and then I want to click on search passenger. Shall I do it? Yeah? Okay. Let's try it. Yeah, it works. Wonderful, wonderful. So it turns out the guy here in the front is saying the truth, which is a wonderful thing. Okay. So let me sum up. What did we see? We have seen that lazy loading can improve your startup performance because you don't need to load everything when the application starts, but just your, let's say, application shell. And then you also need a build configuration that is splitting up your whole bundle into several chunks that can be loaded by the means of lazy loading. We have also seen that preloading helps to prevent this delay during the execution of the application, this delay that happens when the module in question is lazy loaded. We have also seen that there is this pattern with the core module that bypasses this issue that arises when you are using shared modules together with lazy loading. And you have seen this other pattern that is implemented by the router and by some other libraries. And this pattern allows you to provide one shared module, one for perhaps dedicated shared module in two flavors. One flavor comes with the services and it is intended for the root module, and another flavor comes without services and it is intended for the other modules. So thanks for coming. You will find all I have shown here on my blog, Software Architect IT, and I will, of course, Twitter about it. So thanks for coming and have a nice conference.